So what makes this style so special?
Let me show you something.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
So you grab here,
All right.
and for your own protection, put this one up.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Oh man, this is gonna be a good one. What's going on, everyone? Matic here, and welcome to our reaction rants, where we look at martial arts videos, finding things of value within them, while also looking at commenters that should pay a tax for the oxygen that they waste. So as this is our first video, I thought it'd be a really good thing to look at a really good martial arts video that came out a little over a month ago by Jesse on Comp, where he actually finds a Japanese Jujutsu school and learns some things about them and how they do things. Now, the way that I typically try to do these react videos is I'll see a video about once or twice, kind of get my initial opinions, and then when I record it is when I'll watch it, and then I'll do my actual commentary. In this particular video, it is a 30-minute video. The link to it will be in the description. I highly suggest you go watch it. It is very informative and awesome video. But there's about 2, maybe 3 things within the video that I kind of want to expand upon or give a little bit more clarification on what's actually. So for those who know, Jesse is looking at a classical jiu-jitsu style or classical Japanese martial arts style called Yago Shingon. It has roughly about a 400-year history, and what people don't realize is all these classical jiu-jitsu styles do more than just jiu-jitsu or unarmed combat. They also do weapons work that complements and mimics some of the unarmed stuff they do, which we will get later into the video. Speak Japanese, not supposed to. So
we're going to
kind of pay
learn
attention
about
a
the
little
body.
bit.
So if you grab my clothes,
Right.
so if you notice, I pin your shoulder now, and I pin your arm,
Yes.
and I also have your elbow.
Yeah.
You see, I move your muscles.
Exactly.
So what do I connect to then?
The bone.
The bone. Because muscles carries strength. Bones doesn't carry any strength in themselves.
So there's no resistance.
No resistance.
All right, so this is kind of interesting. So when he's talking about going past the muscle to the bone, what he's basically talking about is when you're doing certain techniques, and I'll show it again at the very beginning of that kata that he did. The grip that he has on Jesse's arm is actually, I'm pretty sure, like fairly tight, just by the nature of, if you look at his fingers, the way they're kind of digging in. But what he means by going past the muscle to the bone is, this is a thing that's kind of dependent on which shoe styles or whatever. I've worked with a little bit of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu people or their concepts, the way they do things. So some styles talk about just having a firm enough grip to where you can kind of twist the skin on the person's limbs or whatever, not really death gripping or anything. And then there are also styles that it almost seems like this one, I would have to feel what they're actually doing, but that grip that he winds up getting, so instead of grabbing the forearm or maybe the bicep, it looks like he's actually trying to grab the elbow joint, which there's not a whole lot of muscle around, so he's able to directly get to the bone, as he's talking about, or what we'll call the structure. And so he moves you from the structure. So you can actually take your own hand, grab your elbow joint, and just dig in a bit, and you automatically have pain. So this is getting close to like a pain compliance technique, along with, you know, using principles of Japanese stuff like that. But even then, going by what he means by going past the bone is you are finding ways to compress the muscle so much that you're now resting on the bone itself. So on the arm, that's fairly easy. It's a singular bone. And right here on the lower trap, which is, or the lower tricep, which is kind of where his knee is or was, there's not a whole lot of muscle here. So it's fairly easy to just go straight to the bone. It's like, and that's typically what Japanese Jiu-Jitsu styles try to do, is instead of attacking, they do wind up attacking your center of gravity and stuff like that, or but they try not to manhandle you nearly as much. They try to attack your structure and disrupt your structure at least just enough to manipulate your body at that point to make you do what they want.
Now look at this. You see how I am in line with my bones now. Feet, knee, hand, and look at my rear leg, it will open my body. And
I think most people only focus on what to do with the opponent and not what to do with themselves.
Okay, so this is really important what Jesse just said. Most people seem to be more concerned of what they do to their opponent versus what they do to themselves. And this is incredibly true. And this is something that happens to martial arts or fighters in general from beginner level, even to certain levels of advance. And there's actually a phrase or concept that applies to this very thing. And I'll show you to you right now. Okay, so here we actually have a scroll in our dojo here. And the phrasing is Agatsu, Magatsu, Katsu Haibe. What do these mean? So Agatsu is victory over yourself. Magatsu is victory over your opponent. And Katsu Haibe is victory through speed. So we've all kind of heard like the first victory over yourself, victory over your opponent, or mastery of yourself and mastery of your opponent. So these two things we kind of need to go in depth to. So victory over yourself or mastery of yourself. This basically means that if we're talking about fighting, that when you do a technique, you focus purely on doing the technique. And the technique roughly shouldn't change versus you doing the technique in air or when you wind up hitting a target or a bag or something like that. The only difference is now you're trying to handle the recoil or the resistance of the target, but the technique shouldn't change. And if you focus purely on the technique, basically making your body do the correct thing that it's supposed to do that technique, you wind up getting Agatsu or victory yourself. Next, we get to Magatsu, or victory over your opponent. What this is if you have achieved Agatsu, victory over yourself, you do the technique, it becomes muscle memory or reflex to do the technique correctly. Once you introduce an opponent, it basically becomes almost the same as when you start hitting a target versus air. Now that there's an opponent there, the only difference is that there's someone capable of hitting back.
Or don't hit back.
But the way that you do the technique fundamentally doesn't really change outside of factors like distance, terrain, guarding position, body position, stuff like that. But so say I'm going to do a basic technique. One of the things I'm doing for my Baki series is I am reaching out, grabbing my opponent's front hand or manipulating my opponent's hands, just kind of whatever I feel like doing. But when I'm practicing it in air or against some tool or apparatus that I figure out, I reach out, I grab, however I do that, manipulate, or I might just hold and say like, I just throw a front kick. I can do that by myself, just working technique. Boom, boom. It's like that. So that gets me to this stage of Agatsu. When I start using it in actual sparring or against an actual opponent to achieve Magatsu, this is kind of one of those techniques where it's fairly easy to go from Agatsu to Magatsu. And that once I grab my opponent's wrist, they can only do one of two things. They can either try to attack me or they can try to pull away. And if they try to pull away, that actually helps me because I'm holding on to them and it can actually help drive my kick in or any other technique after that. If they try to come in, that makes it a little bit different, and that's where the experimentation and all that mess comes in. But the fundamental dynamics of the technique of me reaching out, grabbing, and throwing my kick or my technique doesn't change. So that's how I get to Magatsu, or victory over your opponent. From there, the last stage is victory through speed. Now, what this means is if you focus on getting Agatsu, and you can wind up achieving Magatsu, between here, if you practice diligently, you wind up getting victory through speed. By correct usage of the technique and practice of the technique, you wind up, or you should wind up, hopefully, eliminating as much wasted movement to where everything just flows. So at the same time that I'm essentially grabbing for my opponent, if we're using our previous example, my foot is directly after that. It's almost the same time. I basically don't stop moving. Boom. And that's how I achieve victory through speed, because I'm just purely working the technique. And if the technique is a valid one, it winds up being fast. So again, Agatsu, Magatsu, Katsu Hayabe. Victory over yourself, victory over your opponent, victory through speed.
And so how is this connected to judo?
That's a very good question. If you look at the judo grip,
Yeah.
now I'm not good at judo,
Okay.
but you kind of throw and you turn your back and you throw.
Right.
You will get thrown,
Yes.
and I will let you fall, and maybe you do break fall,
Yeah.
and we are both happy.
Yeah.
You can train quite hard like that. You can do it really fast.
Yes.
If I would do this really fast,
Yeah.
it would be not good.
No.
No. So you really injure yourself. Did you see what naturally happened with your other hand?
Yeah, it moved the other direction.
Move the other direction.
Yeah.
But if I move in this direction,
Yeah. Now I could use my other hand.
yes.
Yeah. Because judo is a sport.
You can
So this is a very important thing, and this will actually, he actually demonstrates very well on the difference between real life martial arts and sportified martial arts, and this kind of includes MMA type stuff and all that. When you take something and you make it a sport, so one of the things that people kind of know, and they slightly realize it, but they don't truly understand the implications of it, is that judo was created by Jiro Kano, and it was a combination of traditional Japanese Jujutsu styles similar to this. And the simple thing is, he basically took all the really dangerous stuff, took it out, and created judo, one as a physical education program type thing, and as a way to preserve martial arts during this period of going from the art or jutsu of a martial art to the do or way of a martial art. And he's very correct that you can do judo throws very, very hard, very, very fast, and if you're on a mat, you can do them throughout a training session. Is the risk of injury there? Yes. Can you do slight tweaks to the throws or techniques to make them very, very devastating? Of course you can. But as he points out in traditional jiu-jitsu stuff, simply by doing the lock, so when he's doing that pulling and gripping on the elbow, that can be a very simple, just boom, snapping the person's elbow. And even if you don't go to that breaking point, if you just go to get that lock on them to where you can manipulate a person, if you do that hard and fast too many times, you start degrading your partner's joints. So even though you're not hurting them by breaking the limb, you are, over a long term of training, affecting the quality of their joints. And this is actually one of the reasons why that when you see demonstrations of classical martial arts and stuff like that, the attacker or the dummy or whatever kind of goes with the technique, is because through training, they have an understanding that, hey, this is what's actually happening to your body. You are broken, or you're on the verge of being broken. And to get out of it, you have to go with the technique. Now, there are the complete other sides to where the person applying the technique barely does anything and the person just goes with it. That's crap. That is very bad martial arts. But what we typically try to do, that any throws or takedowns or anything that we do, is to train, to be safe, is we allow the beginning of the technique to be felt, and then we go with it. And through mutual understanding and agreement, we will start to resist the technique more and more in order for the other person to work on being more correct. So one of the things I want to point out, and this is a really good thing that they show, is the difference between an actual fighting art and the sportified version of it, is that in the actual art, he actually uses a principle to where, one, he kind of extends his opponent, but he also goes to the outside or towards their back. And what it does is, one, since Jesse has a hold of him, when he gets pulled, it sends basically his power hand or his next hand that he's going to punch with away from the opponent. So it's actually harder for him to try to attack.
would do this really fast.
Yeah.
Or if he tries to attack, he winds up kind of being pulled off of his base, and now his structure is compromised. While when he kind of went to do a very simple judo throw, he comes in the Jesse space to where he's either able to hit him or he could grab onto him as well. So that way, even if he manages to throw Jesse, because he can grab a hold of him, he can take him down with him or put him in a non-advantageous position to where he can no longer finish the opponent off. It now becomes a ground game fight instead of one person maintaining the high ground.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
Instead of one person staying on their feet and the other person being lower than them in order to make the fight easier and be less dangerous to yourself.
So now it's time for you to try a real class.
Okay.
So we will put a hakama on you.
All right, so I'm going to end it there. Again, we're stopping about the 20-minute mark of Jesse's video. There's about another 10 minutes of it of him actually practicing in an actual class, and there's some other pretty good stuff in that if you know what to look for and see. I highly suggest you go see the video, and I hope the things I was able to present, some of it is actually explained in the video, but hopefully I was able to add a little bit more context or a little bit more clarity to it, or add some things that you had no idea about. That'd be awesome. So I hope y'all enjoyed this. I'm Matic, and I'll see y'all later.